One of the ways that we can begin to assess how ethical someone's behavior is to look to a code of ethics that already exists in our society. And thankfully for us, communication researchers have come up with a credo of ethics that we can look to specifically for public speaking. So these tenets come from the National Communication Association's Credo for Ethical Communication, and it's a set of beliefs that communication scholars have about the ethics of human communication. So first and foremost, we want to make sure that we advocate for the truthfulness, accuracy, honesty, and reason of a message. As public speakers, this should be one of our first ethical areas that we look to. Look to the truthfulness of a message. Look to how accurate that information is. Look to how honest a speaker is being with an audience. And this is really key because if we are in the business of conveying inaccurate information or dishonest information, then that's just not ethical to begin with. And so we need to advocate for truthfulness and honesty. We also endorse the freedom of expression, diversity of perspective, and we have a tolerance for dissent. In other words, we want to make sure that everyone's voice is heard, that everyone has this freedom to express themselves and to let everyone know what their thoughts and feelings are, and that we value the diversity of perspective that the world provides us with. Not everyone is going to have the same views on any given subject, and having a diversity of views on something is the best way for us to come up with the best solution to a number of given problems that exist in our world, because we can come to understand the complexity of the problems and the complexity of the people involved. And that involves a tolerance of dissent as well, because we need to listen to all sides of an issue before coming up with a solution to any given problem that exists. So we want people to express themselves. We want that diversity of perspective. In addition, we strive to understand and respect other communicators before evaluating and responding to their messages. In other words, we don't want to just write someone off simply because we don't respect them or simply because we think negatively of them. And this can be something that's very difficult for us to do as communicators, because one of our bad habits of being human is looking at someone else and coming up with a snap judgment about them. But this code basically says that we want to come to understand and respect other communicators before we completely throw their messages out. We also want to promote access to communication resources. So we want to make sure that everyone has access to being able to share their thoughts and feelings. We want to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to fulfill their potential and contribute to their societies. And this is also based on the idea that human communication is a skill that can and should be taught. So we want people to have those skills in order to express themselves in the most effective way. In addition, we want to promote communication climates of caring and mutual understanding that respect the unique needs and characteristics of individual communicators. So we want to make sure that everyone feels safe to express themselves, and that we want to show that we care about our audience and understand our audience, and that we have everyone's best interests at heart. So this creates that climate of caring and mutual understanding that leads to the most effective communication. We also condemn communication that degrades individuals and humanity. So we don't want messages to be distorted or intimidating or coercive or violent. We condemn that kind of communication because it's not helpful. It doesn't get anything done. And some public speakers have been known to call for violence or incite mobs of people to commit atrocities, and we do not want this type of communication. This type of communication is dangerous, and we want communication that fosters community and brings people together rather than tearing them apart. We also don't tolerate any ist language, right? Sexist language, heterosexist language, racist language, or any other form of language that demeans and belittles groups of people. This type of language is just not okay according to this credo. We are also committed to the courageous expression of personal convictions. Oftentimes, it's daunting to share our perspectives about the world and to make the world listen to us. But we want people to listen. We want people to express their beliefs, and we want them to express their needs and the things that they see wrong with the world. We want people to speak up and stand up and let the world know what's wrong and how we can start to fix these problems. A recent example of this courageous expression is the movement that we are seeing with the kids from Parkland, Florida, after the shooting at their school. We have seen in recent times them standing up and speaking out to politicians and all of these various different people to say that enough is enough and we need to change things. We are committed to this expression of personal conviction. We also advocate for the sharing of information, opinions, and feelings while also respecting privacy and confidentiality. Oftentimes we have to balance personal disclosure with discretion. Sometimes we might be sharing information or opinions or feelings that betray someone else's right to privacy and confidentiality. In other words, we don't want to be spreading everyone's secrets when they don't want those secrets spread. So, for example, if you have a great anecdote about one of your friends that really makes your point in a public speech, you need to make sure that you get your friend's permission to share that story first. Because we want that information, right? We want to hear people's personal stories, but only if they give the okay. We also want to accept the responsibility for and the consequences of our communication. So sometimes people are going to react to something that we say. In fact, in a lot of instances, people are going to react in various different ways to the messages that we put out into the world. And we have to be ready and willing to accept the consequences of those messages, regardless of whether they are good consequences or bad consequences. We have to take responsibility for the messages that we put out into the world. And especially here in the 21st century, very easily your message could go viral and could be seen by millions of people that were not necessarily your intended audience. But regardless of that, the message is out there, and you need to be ready and willing to accept the consequences of the messages that you put out into the world. So these are just some of the ideas that communication scholars have come up with when looking to the ethical regards of public speaking. And these are some of the things that we need to keep in mind when we are doing public speaking ourselves, as well as when we are listening to other people give public speeches.